What if I told you you could get faster flicks without actually improving your skill? You could change your approach and see progress. Now don't get me wrong, practice is very important, but so is your approach. If you practice a skill and then don't use it correctly, you won't play well. So how can you improve your flick technique to flick faster? Let's break down what flicks are, the common approach to flicking, and how you can change it so that you flick more quickly. If you're new to the channel, I'm an aim coach. I've worked with Valorant pros, top 500 players, and a bunch of popular FPS games, and I use this channel to give you guys the best techniques for aim improvement that I can. Make sure you subscribe if you want to aim better. So when you flick, you start with a large flick, something to cover the majority of the distance between your crosshair and the enemy. And then you correct where your crosshair is relative to the target with a micro adjustment, and then you just click on the target. Between each of these steps, there's also usually a delay. Flick, wait, adjust, wait, click. We can use this to take some time off of your flicks. For the large initial flick, you should be balancing speed and the success of this flick. If you flick so slowly that you always get on target first try, chances are you will die way more often than not because people will aim slightly faster, hit most of their shots, and occasionally miss. When they hit the shot, you die. When they miss, you kill them. Or they will hit their second shot before you hit your first, depending on how slow you are. On the contrary, if you flick so insanely fast that you have to make a bunch of micro adjustments to get back on target, then this flick will also take a lot of time. So try to balance speed and accuracy, especially on the initial flick, and you'll find you get to the targets a lot faster. For the second step, the wait before the micro adjustment, you have a few options on what you can do here. You can follow through, wait, and then adjust. You can click, and if you miss, adjust, or you can just adjust based on intuition. Each of these have their own benefits. If you wait and then adjust afterwards, you won't miss your first shot. If you're using a sniper in an unfair situation in your favor, this would be very beneficial. However, if the other person is capable of killing you between the wait and the adjustment, you're risking letting them out aim you. If you shoot the sniper, it's true, you will have to reload, but if you wait and adjust, you risk dying. So it depends on the game you play, how your skill compares to your enemies, and a bunch of other factors. If you're in a fair op versus op sniper battle, you usually want to try to get the shot off fast without missing more than half the time. If you're against some SMG, especially in a high TTK game like Apex Legends, you usually want to take your time to line up the shot a bit better. The easiest way to decide between shooting before you micro adjust and micro adjust then shooting is to think about how often you'll miss, which depends on the pace of your initial flick, and then decide how often you'll die if you wait to take the shot. But at the end of the day, you also want this to be really reflexive and not have to bog down your flicks with conscious decision making every time someone peeks you, so you should practice the approach you plan to bring into game and then just kind of let it happen. When you're using rifles, SMGs, and most other guns in most FPS games, choosing to wait and then adjust over just shooting, adjusting, and shooting again is often insane. You have the opportunity to get a kill or get a shot off with almost no risk as to what happens next. Maybe recoil makes shot 2 a bit less accurate, but in most games, it's not sniper consequences. You can adjust and shoot again with high accuracy. So far, I've only gone over 2 of the 3 options. Remember the third option, adjusting based on intuition without reaction? This one is the best option, but it does take some skill. Whether or not you're at the level it requires depends on the situation you're in. If you don't know what I mean by intuition, just play Jumbo Tile Frenzy. You'll find you don't need to react to know you're on target, you just know and you click. Imagine the same intuition telling you you're off target and by how much. But here's the kind of weird, hard to understand part. You don't actually consciously know this. It's not information you're able to verbally report or consciously think. It's an intuition. You are off target, so you're able to adjust to be on target by knowing you're off target, but you don't know you're off target. If you're able to do this, there isn't really a point to flick, shoot, adjust, shoot, or flick, stop, adjust, shoot. The flick and the adjustment are 2 connected motions. If you do miss the adjustment, you can shoot again, but this will be a lot less common. A good way to tell if you do this is just to play a TAF or a reflex flick scenario where you don't really have time to react and then micro adjustment after already reacting and flicking or do much thinking, and then just VOD review yourself afterwards. If sometimes you're off target but put yourself on target by micro adjusting without ever thinking about it or giving yourself time to react, then you are able to do this intuitively. But again, remember, aim should be reflexive. That's the most important thing, so don't think too much about your approach in game. Just train using these strategies and let it happen in game. Now, most people also have a pause between the micro adjustment and clicking. This pause can be eliminated far more easily than the previous pause, as you don't really have to make a complex action, you just click. I didn't really think of this until I talked to Europe and Guoria. Europe is one of the best static players in the world. Guoria is a rank 2 in the RA aim lab benchmarks and a rank 4 in aim beast's built-in leaderboard. To explain what they were saying, let's go back to Jumbo Tile Frenzy. You don't need to react to know you're on target, you just click. Imagine the same feeling in small static clicking, like 1 while 4 targets small. You don't need to see, you just click and move on. You know internally, not externally. For this to work in small static, you have to be at a very high level because these scenarios demand very high accuracy. Europe was still learning this last we talked, and Guoria didn't even think that he was at a high enough level to do it yet. He just had the idea. This isn't because he can't do it, but because it wouldn't be beneficial in scenarios where 95% accuracy is mid. But this isn't the case in TAC FPS games. A good headshot accuracy in Valorant is half of that, and that only compares to body shots, not the shots that go in the air by someone's head. Shooting a second time when needed is almost always an option. So to implement this into a game, all you have to do is after your micro adjustment, teach yourself to click immediately. And if after you catch up to what happened a couple hundred milliseconds later and the enemy still isn't dead, just adjust and shoot again. Sure, it's possible that you die in that time, but if you're against someone who's around your skill level or better, there's a good chance that waiting to react before clicking would have also gotten you killed. Since FPS games have a ton of factors and your skill varies in a bunch of ways, if you find you die more without visual confirmation than with it, then feel free to use it in a game. It isn't very hard to learn in games, it's also not hard to unlearn, as it's just waiting to make a single click or clicking immediately, so feel free to experiment. Typically, whether or not this works well for you mainly depends on how consistent your micro adjustments are and how good your opponents are. If you almost always land your micros, then there's no point in waiting to be absolutely sure you're on target. And if your enemies are good, waiting to make sure you're on target is also insane because they'll just shoot you while you're waiting. Remember, these are strategies to experiment with in your own gameplay. Exactly what's perfect for you will vary based on your skill level, your enemy's skill level, what kind of gunfights you end up in, and a bunch of other factors. Just try to avoid overthinking when flicking and teach yourself these strategies by practicing them and self-VOD reviewing rather than trying to consciously switch between them in-game, as that would be the worst thing you could do for your aim. Thanks for watching, comment any questions you have on this video, and subscribe for more aim training content.